Questions, don't leave them hanging.
Yeah. We're basking in the awe that is you.
Oh, for God's sake. That's very fine. That's very sweet of you, but I'm a goofy guy that does, I'm a decent guy with a good sense of humor. That's how I kind of look at myself. Yes, sir?
Because I've always been curious about it. How did you get approached for Ninja Turtles originally?
Well, it was just a regular audition. That is to say, when you're in LA or when you're in town, you have an agent who, they get something called a breakdown, which is from the breakdown services. Actors have breakdowns every day, but in this case, it's a service which provides a breakdown of new projects which are being cast, whether it's live action or animation, and even commercials. And in this case, I happened to be working on a show many moons ago called Fraggle Rock, which was the animated version of Fraggle Rock, which was on NBC. Thank you. And I was working on that with a couple of folks who ended up being on Turtles, Townsend Coleman, who ended up being Michelangelo, and the director of Fraggle Rock was a fellow named Stu Rosen. And as I recall, we were at work on Fraggle Rock, and he said, "Hey man, I've got this thing I'm casting called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles." And I thought, I think, I'm not a comic book guy, but I had heard, I believe, of the comic book thing. And so I thought, wow, that's sort of a LSD-induced kind of name for a thing. Somebody probably drank a shitload of bong water and said, "Hey man, I'm going to make a show. I love that. That's my kind of guy," being an ex-hippie. So I got the audition and went in and read. And as I recall, they in the old days before the advent of MP3s and all that stuff, they would have us kind of mix and match and read with other people. So they would have me come in and read with Townsend, and they say, "Okay, Rob, you do Michelangelo, and Townsend, you try Donatello," and then they would mix, blah, blah, blah. Finally, they said, "Okay, you're on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles." Of course, nobody knew what that was or what it was going to be. Right. And then the first day of recording, Leonardo, who was Cam Clark, Michelangelo was Townsend Coleman, Donatello was Barry Gordon, and myself as Raphael. I remember they kind of like played vocal chess with us. They mixed us around. Say, "Okay, Rob, you try Donatello, and Townie, you try Raphael," and then so they said, "Okay, we kind of like this group, and all right, Rob, you're Raphael, Townsend, you're Michelangelo, Barry, you're Donatello, and Cam, you're Leonardo." And then they threw in Pete Renaday, who was Master Splinter, who was also Mickey Mouse on and off for a while, great guy. A young actress whom we'd never met, Renee Jacobs, ended up being April O'Neil. James Avery, who came to be known better as Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince, was Shredder. And off we went on this journey that ended up being part of a pop cultural icon, and certainly to kind of anticipate the question, nobody ever knew that it was going to become Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I don't think even Kevin and Peter knew either, the two creators. I think that they were probably thrilled to get a show sold, the first 5 of which were paid for by Playmates Toys, and then they decided to do 8 more to make it a run of 13. And Playmates still makes the action figures. So man, I am, talk about the gift that keeps on giving.
Right.
No pun intended, an evergreen franchise. It's astonishing that. And you can even make the argument that it's as popular, if not more popular now, because of Twitter and because the audience is so huge. I think we were talking to your boy today, or left a message for your son today. And what's really great is that we have people who, are like your son Mac, who are Turtle fans, and he's 11, so he's not a little boy. He's 11, and people who are your age love the new show. And I got to tell you, it's really good. My own son, who's 29, sort of reserved judgment and called me up after 4 or 5 episodes he saw on Hulu and said, "Jesus Christ, this is really good." And I believe it's because the people who are making the show get it. They're all 35 to 40 years old, so they grew up, at least aware of the Turtles when they were not little kids. My son was 6 or 7, 8 when it really hit. But Cira Nieli, who's the executive producer now at Nickelodeon, is probably in his late 30s or 40ish or so. But he was not only a comic book geek, but grew up loving the Turtles. And the people making the show, they get the mythology, they get the ethos, they respect the fans to the bone, and they respect the franchise. So I believe that's why we got such a huge audience of people sort of 30 to 35 and 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. That's a very unusual circumstance for a show that has been a franchise that's a generation old. You know? Anybody else?
What's a typical day of recording as a voice actor like?
Well, if you're lucky enough to work, it's, in my case, it depends on how many shows you're working on. And I say that because what the cool thing is about what we do is that we can work on as many shows as people are kind enough to hire us for. That was grammatical right, or not. But I've had as many as 7 shows going at one time. I remember in the 90s I had Turtles, I had Animaniacs, I had Pinky and the Brain, I had The Mask, I had The Tick, I had Biker Mice from Mars. Oh God, I don't even remember what the other, but and then like now I'm working as a regular on Turtles, a really fun show for little kids called Doc McStuffins. Excellent show, very clever. We still do Tinkerbell videos, I think once a year. And then I guess, I'm semi-regular on a show called Ben 10 for Cartoon Network. So there's always something going on, and of course it's not a show where, it's not the circumstance where you have to be on a set all day. You just go in and you do your gig, and often if I've only got 3 or 4 lines, they say, Rob, you've only got 4 lines, you want to knock them out first? I say, sure. Or sometimes I say, no, I just want to stay and be with everybody, because it's great, it's a great fun. But sometimes I have no recording, like I'm here till Monday afternoon, because I have a workshop tomorrow night, a voice acting workshop, and I won't be done with that till probably 11:30, and then I thought, I just didn't want to get on a red eye. We normally record Ninja Turtles on Mondays, but I'm going to miss this Monday because I'm here. Also, a cool thing about what I do is that they don't fire you, they pick you up when you get back. It's great. I don't believe I have any sessions on Tuesday, but I have lots to do because I have a podcast that's become pretty successful. And we do it live we started doing it live last Wednesday at the Improv in Hollywood, which is, if you're into the comedy scene, it is that and the Comedy Store are the 2 meccas of showbiz in Hollywood for stand-up, for humor. So anyway, I'm grateful that the Improv came after us and said, we'd love to have you do your show here. So now I've got my own gig, which I'm preparing, calling actors, getting stuff together. So.
Don't you have a Twitter for that too?
For the podcast?
The Improv, yeah, the podcast.
I don't have a Twitter specifically for the podcast. For those of you who are interested, my Twitter handle is @YakkoPinky.
Oh, we stalk you already.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, I'm grateful to be stalked by anybody. And I'm so, look at you smiling. We got one beautiful, I'm here with all these stinky guys. We got one gorgeous rose amongst all these frickin' thorns.
So thank you for classing up the joint, sweetheart. The Improv is great because they have their own PR machine. And what was really cool, I'm kind of segueing into something else, but the typical day for me is, it depends. And I know that's kind of a nebulous answer, but it does depend on how many shows I'm working on. Right now I've probably got 3 or 4 that I'm working on as a regular and semi-regular. So Tuesday I won't have any recording, I don't think. I have to check my schedule, but I'll have other stuff to do. And I do a lot of conventions. I'm doing more and more and more of them. And then to segue into the thing with respect to the Improv, now being kind enough to have us there, they have their own PR machine. So man, we did the first show last Wednesday with Billy West and Maurice LaMarche, which was spectacular. And that will be up Monday on iTunes and my app, which is a Talkin Toons app, and it's free on for Android and Apple devices. It's usually up every Friday, but it's not up now because Chris Pope, who puts it up and kind of produces it on the iTunes end of things, is here. So he's busy with some of his clientele, and so he'll put it up on Monday, but it is freaking amazing. Hearing Billy and Mo just go off is great. And what's really great is that not only them, but it's at the Improv, which is a great place. It's got a great vibe there. But the Improv has their own PR machine, and I think the place holds 220 people. We had almost 200 there on our first night. And what we heard from the Improv management was, this is great. And I said, yeah, it is great. I mean, I don't think I'm so great. I was smart to put together this little thing, but it's great because when you get people like Maurice and Billy and Greg Delisle and Mark Hamill and John DiMaggio and Clancy Brown, you name it, people who are sometimes on-camera actors too, but their voice work is phenomenal. And all you gotta do is let people get their nose under the tent and they go, oh my God, I didn't know that Maurice was this and this and this, or that Billy West was this and this and this and this and this and this. I mean, all these guys, we've all been doing it for 25 to 30 years. So I am incredibly grateful and gratified that people pay attention. And so my contention is that if, what I would love to do is get this to be a television show. I think that it would be a great, I don't know if it would be called a reality show or like an animated version of Inside the Actor's Studio, whatever, because it's good. It's a great, at the risk of sounding arrogant, it was a very good idea. And I think the timing is particularly good because of what we spoke about earlier, I pontificated about earlier, in terms of our timing, because of like Ninja Turtles, Animaniacs is on the hub. It's 20 years old, but I meet people at these things that were 7 or 8 when Animaniacs, and now they're 27 or 30, and they've got a child, and their kids are going, oh my God, I love this, and the parents are going, oh my God, I still love this, and it's timeless, and that speaks to the genius of Mr. Spielberg and how he knew that when he was putting it together, it was clearly written on several levels, just like Looney Tunes, just like Rocky and Bullwinkle, just like The Simpsons, So I and my co-workers are in a very good position to I think do something that's entertaining and to go out and meet people. I love doing these because I go, hello nurse, and you do that. it's how lucky am I? So I believe that if there's room for comic book men, and Kevin's at the Improv, Kevin Smith is at the Improv. He's a podcasting guru in addition to a featured film director and all that stuff. And if there's room for that and cosplay heroes on sci-fi, then I want to say, excuse me, Mr. Cable station guy who picks up TV shows, give me 13 of these. Give me 13 of these on the air and let me expose the world to John DiMaggio and Maurice LaMarche and Tress MacNeille and Kat Soucie and Tara Strong and Kevin Conroy and on and on and on and on and on. And I would be willing to bet money that you will get a pretty large audience, because just the characters that I've been lucky enough to work on, I could argue have millions of fans.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that is hyperbole. And I'm only one guy. And the same is true with Maurice, the same is true with Welker, the same is true with Tress, the same is true with Peter Cullen, on and on and on and on. I've known these guys for 30 years. So, and I'm getting maybe 50 to 60,000 listeners a month on my podcast with this much professional PR. It's just word of mouth and new media, and I have nothing but 5 stars. And again, it's not because I'm a genius, it's because my friends are who they are. And they're all your friends and your listeners' friends. Your listeners just don't always know it. But once they find out, it's the coolest thing in the world. It makes everybody smile and laugh. Nostalgia is a huge, deep, profound emotion. And man, if you've got, like you, man, when my kid was a little boy, he wanted to watch the Muppets and Sesame Street, and I could watch that stuff all day. If my son had come along a little later, we'd had to watch Teletubbies and Barney, right? I know, and I'd have shoved the gun in my mouth. So now, when parents go, "Oh my God, the new Ninja Turtles is so good! I love watching it," or my kids want to watch Animaniacs, And it's great music and it's great stuff, and I love it because it's nostalgic and it's still brilliant, and it's still, the music is second to none. And so all of us also are still doing it. Nancy Cartwright has been Bart Simpson forever, and she's been on my podcast. I've known her since before The Simpsons. So I can call up Nancy and say, hey, why don't you and Tress come on and do a live, do whatever, Talkin Toons live on the on the International Film Channel or on AMC or whatever, or Netflix or Hulu was making proprietary shows.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so you get to hear from Bart Simpson and Tress, who's done probably a couple hundred episodes of The Simpsons. Oh, and she's also Babs, and she's Dot, and she's was Chip on Chip and Dale, and she was Gadget. So you have a huge audience who will watch that and go, oh my God, it's my childhood. And there's no downside. And they all have kids, and they are grown-ups, and they have money, and they buy stuff. So I think, like the cons here, it can be it's a win-win-win-win-win. It makes people feel good. It reminds them of their childhood. Often it reminds them of a very awful circumstance that they got through because of the cartoons. It makes them, they go back and go, man, my parents got a divorce, but my brother and I hung on to each other, and man, we watched Ninja Turtles, or I was bullied and I watched Ninja Turtles, or my mother had leukemia and we watched Pinky and the Brain and made her laugh. That happens all the time. And so, and because you have an audience now who's old enough, they have disposable income and they can come to cons and they can buy action figures. So I believe it is great on every level. It's capitalistic, it's emotional, it's nostalgic, it makes you happy. So I just think that there's a good opportunity there, and I want to be the guy driving the ship. I think I can do that, and that's kind of my next goal, my next step for my little podcast. So your sweet, easy question went into a 15-minute diatribe.
Them are the best
You had a
kind.
question,
We
sir.
don't care.
Well, if you could, and don't mind dialing it way back.
Yeah.
How early did you become fascinated and aware of your own ability to create character voices, and at what point did you decide that was something you wanted to pursue?
Oh, what a great question. I was aware, well, let me back up even further. I was aware when I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old, and I'm 57, so you're talking about in the early 60s, aware of watching Rocky and Bullwinkle and the original Looney Tunes and Johnny Quest when it was a primetime show on ABC. And Tim Matheson was the original voice of Johnny Quest. And I remember, of course, like most people, being enamored by cartoons, The Wonderful World of Disney. I think I was more of a Warner Brothers guy than a Disney guy. I always loved all the stuff. I really loved the goofy cartoons when the very stentorian guy would be saying, here's how we play golf, and Goofy would do something stupid and wrap a golf around his neck. But I was like, if Disney's the happiest place on earth, and Warner Brothers is the funniest place on earth to me. So I was very aware of not only how much I enjoyed them, but I was also early on trying to figure out who did these voices. Of course, they didn't really have, Mel did everything on Warner Brothers, so that didn't take long to figure out, but I figured out that it was Edward Everett Horton who did Fractured Fairy Tales, I learned very quickly that Paul Frees was Boris, and he was the Pillsbury Doughboy, and he was Inspector Fenwick, and he was the Haunted Mansion. He's the voice of the Haunted Mansion, and on and on and on. And so it didn't take me long to realize that these guys, man, they can do some magical stuff. And June Foray was Rocky, and she was Nell Fenwick, and she was Witch Hazel, and Dawes Butler was Huckleberry Hound, and Yogi, and Don Messick, all those characters. So I was pretty cognizant of that before I was 10. I never thought of myself as a guy who was going to be a voice actor. I knew that I wanted to be a performer. In fact, my wife and I were talking about this tonight. I'm really fortunate that I've known what I've wanted to do for a long time. From the time I was probably 15 or 20, I knew I wanted to be a performer. I was a singer first, and segued into acting. But all my heroes, oh, thank you very much. That's vodka, right? Great. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Drinking a bubbly. Yeah, no, hell.
NARF, indeed. Extremely NARFy. As I got older, my heroes were Jonathan Winters and Red Skelton and Lucille Ball and Carol Burnett. And then as I got a bit older, it was the Pythons and the Goons, Peter Sellers, the Carry On films. I love British humor, so it kind of was this all big amalgam, and at the same time I was, huge fan of rock and roll like most people, and I was in a lot of rock and roll bands. And then I just for my own enjoyment, started singing in character, creating my own characters or doing dialects in which I could, I have a pretty good ear. So I was really cognizant of all of it, all through high school. And then out of high school, I was in a number of, pretty successful rock and roll bands back in the Midwest, all cover bands. Originals were awful, absolutely awful. But the experience of being able to be essentially a human jukebox, where you were in the same kind of, bars over and over again in factory towns, blue-collar towns, where you're basically like, okay, entertain me. And it was a great experience. Then I got into theater and did a number of years of that and moved to Los Angeles when I was in my early 20s. And when I got there, mind you, there were only ABC, CBS, and NBC that had cartoons. And the people whom we just talked about did virtually all of them. So I didn't think that I was going to be a voice actor per se. I wanted to be a performer, actor, singer, all that. And I was doing a lot of episodic television, a lot of commercials, half a dozen features and stuff, auditioning. If you get half a dozen, you audition for 100, And then my agent said, have you ever thought about doing animation? I said, yeah, but it's a closed shop. And there wasn't as much of it. There wasn't Nickelodeon and Disney and 14 Disney channels and animated features every other week and video games, none of that. So when the opportunity arose, they had a general audition at Hanna-Barbera for Gordon Hunt, who is better known now as Helen's father, was the director on everything. Smurfs, Snorks, which was Smurfs underwater, Johnny Quest, a different permutation or a different iteration of Johnny Quest in the mid-'80s, a new one, all that stuff, and Gordon was the director. And they had occasional open auditions for new talent to see what you got. What you got, kid? And so I went in and got booked on a couple of episodes of things, and at the same time went and read for Marvel and Hasbro, and did my first cartoons were G.I. Joe and Transformers, right, back in '83, I think. And the only two actors whom I know really well, who've been on my podcast out of 105 episodes, are who from day one said, I want to be a voice actor, were James Arnold Taylor, Corey Burton, and Nancy Cartwright. Spark. All of them are enormously successful, but Nancy used to take voice acting lessons by mail via cassette tape with Dawes Butler. As I said, Dawes was Huckleberry Hound, Yogi, Quick Draw McGraw, Captain Crunch, sweet, lovely, dear man. Been dead for a while now, but so Nancy would send cassette tapes, and Dawes would critique them and send cassette tapes back. And Nancy grew up in Ohio, and she was very successful in debate in college, and went to L.A. to be an actress, but she wanted to be a voice actress. I never thought of it in those terms. I thought I wanted to do everything. Then, when I started getting work as a voice actor, I made a conscious choice, probably in the mid-'90s. I was still doing a little on-camera stuff, but I said, no, you know what, this is the way to go, because I'm not encumbered by my average lookingness. I'm an average-looking white guy with a SAG card, and there are a zillion of us in LA. So I'm not good-looking enough to be Brad Pitt. I'm not weird enough looking to be a character actor, but I can do all of it up here. I get hired for things with my voice that I would never get hired for with my face. I get to be Carl Wieser, and I don't ever get girls, but I'm really looking very hard at that one right now. She's hot. And so am I, but it's only because I'm under the lights. But I would never be hired for that on camera, never. And especially not being a celebrity talent. I'm not a movie star, I'm not a TV star. So I made the choice, and I'm really glad I did, because I've had not only enormous amounts of fun, but now I'm old enough to have done a lot of work and I'm obviously the oldest guy in the room, but I've done a lot of work that you guys have all seen. It makes you smile, it makes you happy, and that, I cannot tell you what that does to me, how happy it makes me that it makes you happy. But I'm also young enough now to do these and travel around the world and meet people and have folks nice enough like you guys to come and want to hear me talk about my stuff. I can only, you can't do this forever. Stan Lee's amazing. He's 90. He's old enough to be almost my grandfather. And Bill Shatner, whom I see at a lot of these, is old enough to be my father. He's 82. So I believe that I have got a good amount of time left where I can still do this. And I want to. I really embrace this. I crave it. It's like a drug for me. I want to meet people who have had, who like the work, and in every crowd you will meet somebody on whom my characters or somebody else, and I say forgive me, I don't write them, and I want to make that clear to the folks. I don't write them, I don't draw them. I can't draw worth a shit. I'm not, I'm just an actor and a singer. And it's not false modesty. I'm good at my job, but I realize it's a very collaborative effort. This is not my character. I am the one who reaps most of the benefits because people like the voice. They identify with the voice. So while I can do this, I want to meet everybody. I want to meet as many people as I can. I love to hear the stories of people saying, and oftentimes they get tearful, men and women, when they just say, I can't tell you what happens when I hear you say, something as Raphael, or as Donatello, or, well, now Donatello, or as Pinky or Yakko or Arthur from The Tick or whatever. It reminds me of a time that was very happy, or it reminds me of a time that was very difficult for me, and your, quotes, I'm making quotes, your character got me through it. And that's a big deal. Oh, right, we're on camera. That's a really profound thing for me to experience, because I don't walk down the street and have people say, oh my God, it's Pinky, but when they find out, it's just happiness. So there's really no downside to it. So thank you for I hope that chronologically that made sense to you.
So, thank you so much.
Well, a lot of us know what you look like now, so you probably would get stopped by one of us.
Well, I have to tell you, it's happening more and more, and I embrace that. I'd be lying if I told you that I didn't like it. I mean, for Christ's sake, I'm an actor. So, and from a practical side, I told my wife a couple of years ago, I said, man, they're doing Pixar and Disney and DreamWorks are doing a new animated feature every other week. Right? Not really, but you know what I'm saying. And they're making a ton of money, and often they should. They're great, especially the Pixar ones, right? But I believe, in terms of my belief in my own ability, I can compete with any of those actors. I don't care which movie star you throw into the mix. I've been doing this for 30 years. I should be good by now. I can sing, I can create, I can act, I can make people laugh, I can make them cry, and not just me, all of us. I want to be in that mix too. So how do I do that? Okay, well, I have to find a way, and the podcast seems to be the logical way. I didn't expect that to happen, but great. And people like you are nice enough to video this, and it's on, sooner or later it's on YouTube, and I did a thing a couple years ago with a bunch of my actor buddies at the
Emerald Coast.
yeah. Oh my God, I think it's got 1,600,000 hits. It's great, and I have more people that are recognized. I did an IGN thing a couple months ago that was on a show called Up at Noon with Greg Miller, and that thing got 45,000 views overnight. So I'm starting to learn as an older guy, because that's the way it's going, man. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to stop it. If I were to sit back and go, well, I don't think you know who I am. Well, guess what, dude? There are plenty of ways to get that happening. If you're a halfway decent person, you're halfway good at your job, people are willing, they want to talk to their voice of their child, voices, not mine, others too, of their childhood. And they're willing to help you promote yourself. If you're not an asshole, and so far, I don't think I have been. I want to embrace all this new media, and you guys are incredibly helpful in that realm. So, man, I'm incredibly grateful that you guys want to hear anything I have to say, you know. Does anybody else have a question? No more? I'm so thrilled.